Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Jake Williams Show. I am your host, Jake Williams, episode 42, coming to you a little bit later than expected. And I think you guys know why. Hope you in the States, I know I don't have a ton of international listeners. I have a few. But if you're in the States, I hope you had a very happy and safe Independence Day, 4th of July, whatever you want to call it. I hope again, we're safe. That's the most important thing. We like to set off our fireworks and our explosions. And, when alcohol gets involved with any scenario, it may not end well, especially with explosives. So I hope you guys were safe, and I hope you're ready to enjoy another episode of The Jake Williams Show. And this week will not be like last week. I'm doing my best to separate these things out. I don't want to always be heavy-handed in one particular topic or genre. I know that's kind of the point of a podcast, right? You have one topic, one line of thought, and you kind of just stick with it and you go with it and you just stay that way. Well, that's not the Jake Williams Show. That's just not the Jake Williams way. I'm a guy that has a lot of interest in a lot of different things, and I'm going to be talking about a ton of stuff. One week will be video games, one week movies, next week politics. It's going to be crazy, especially this summer. It's not ready yet, but I am currently working on my first conspiracy theory episode. If you have seen anything I posted on Facebook or Twitter, I want to get more into that stuff and kind of have more weird and out there kind of episodes, because that's another facet of my personality that I'm getting more in touch with. I'm the kind of guy that likes to look at conspiracies. I don't really believe any conspiracy, to be honest, but I find them fascinating, and I find that those lines of thoughts, people that think differently like that. And I'm not gonna go like full Alex Jones on you. All right, I'm not gonna talk about the frogs and the chemicals and turning the frogs gay. No, I'm not gonna do stuff like that. I will make fun of Alex Jones, and maybe at some point I'll talk about the secret lizard people that are really running our government. Maybe we'll jump into that. So and I know you're listening, government, NSA, FBI, I know you're listening to me. I will address the lizard people, and I will be nice, all right? I don't want my lizard overlords beating down my door, shutting down the show. All right, I'm digressing. So today I'm going to do something I want to get back to doing this format. And I know I've changed the format a million times in the show, and that's the thing. It's an evergreen format, and it's what I like about this show is that it'll always keep changing on me. And like I had mentioned just a little bit ago, just different topics, different things I want to talk about. Some episodes I'm going to spend the whole time talking about one thing, but today there's a few things I want to talk about, so let's jump in. Let's dive right on in. Before I do, I'd like to thank those supporting the other shows on Loud and Opinionated, Loud Sports, and Underachievers Games. Some changes are coming to the Loud and Opinionated family, and I will just leave it at that. So the first topic of today's show, I want to talk about my relationship I have now, my weird newfound relationship with Bethesda Softworks, or Bethesda Game Studios, whatever you want to call them. And you're probably wondering what I think about it. Well, if you actually do listen to the Underachievers, thank you. Or if you watched on YouTube our reactions, our live reactions to the Bethesda E3 press conference, I was very disappointed in Bethesda and their showing, because it seemed they leaned heavily on way too, not, I hate using this term, but not the hardcore audience or the hardcore gamers. They seem to lean more towards a weirdly mobile audience. And, I understand the aspect of going after Fallout 76 and going after Elder Scrolls Online. Those are your games of services. They're going to make you the money. They're going to pay the bills, essentially. Even though you have, the Elder Scrolls and you have Fallout that heavily single-player games that make you a lot of money, I can understand saying, oh, well, let's still play around in this universe and let's do an online aspect and, games of service. It seems to be going that way, but they're also heavily pushing mobile. So it pains me to see the choices they're making. Now, if you ask me, my personal opinion, and you're probably wondering why I'm talking about this, I'll get to it in a minute. If you want my personal opinion, I think there's two franchises currently that are really carrying Bethesda, and that is Doom and Wolfenstein, which in 2019, that phrase coming out of my mouth is absolutely insane. These franchises are as old as I am. And the fact that they're the things that excite me most about Bethesda says a lot, because Bethesda's not even involved. They're just publishers. Now, Deathloop from Arcane actually looks pretty cool, but I'm really excited about Wolfenstein Youngblood that's coming out in a few weeks, and I'm even more excited for Doom Eternal coming out in November. So that's my relationship with Bethesda right now. I don't care about Fallout 76 at all. And I'm probably the biggest Fallout fan of my friends. And by friends, I mean me, because I really don't have any friends. You guys know that. I'm one of the biggest Fallout fans I know. And I care deeply about that franchise. And that says a lot about what they've done and what this company has kind of left with me, in the fact that I don't really care about Fallout 76. I think it's great that they decided to put NPCs in the game, which is something they should have done in the first place. You know, all these things that you saw at E3, the big changes coming to 76, I was like, well, that's great. You should have put that in the game in the first place. And quite honestly, I've made a decision that I'm not going to buy that game, because they didn't care enough to give me a finished product and didn't care enough to give a good game and a fair game for everybody. They didn't care enough to make that and put that on the market. Then they do not deserve my money. So, to relate it back to what I was talking about in the first place, the reason I think I have a new weird relationship with Bethesda is I'm still playing Bethesda games to this day. Very specifically, Fallout 4, I've been playing a ton of that lately. Mostly because Paul Rubidoux, co-host of Loud Sports, he got it on PlayStation 4. I have both consoles because, as I mentioned, I'm extra. I'm the social elite. Don't get anything twisted, by the way. It's not like PS4 Pro, Xbox One X. They're just the baseline consoles. But still, I have both. He had it on PS4. He didn't want it, and he let me have it. He's like, yeah, just take it. Give it a new home. Give it somewhere nice. And so now that I had it on PS4, I went through it again and been playing it again. And I am amazed at how much I still love that game. Now, I think Fallout 3 is a better game, 100%. But I think what they were doing with Fallout 4 is different than what you might think of a Fallout game. See, what they were doing with Fallout 4 versus Fallout 3, Fallout 3 was a new take on the old franchise, but is also still appealing to hardcore Fallout fans. And keep in mind, I had never played a Fallout game until Fallout 3, and that changed my life. It was like the gospel. It changed my life. And Fallout 4 seemed to be a game that still had some roots in that DNA, but it was a way of getting it to a wider audience, and then 76 full-fledged goes that direction. But I still love Fallout 4 for what it is. I'm still playing a ton of it. And this is what I'm saying, is like it starts this relationship, the weird relationship that I have with Bethesda, where I think that they're going in a direction that I don't like. For me, they seem like a company, especially I think it was before E3 2017, when they had this whole campaign that single-player games aren't dead, and we still make tons of great single-player games. And then what's the first thing they do at E3? It might have been 2017. First thing they do at E3 2018, they show off Fallout 76 at Games of Service. A game of service, however you want to say it. An online Fallout game. Strictly online. You can play by yourself, but it's strictly online. And that kind of put something in my brain. And I'm starting to realize that I think this was good that Fallout 76 started out as a flop. Congratulations. They're still working on it, and they're making improvements on the people that they scammed $60 out of. Thank God they're doing that for those people. And that's the issue I run into. Even with all of its faults, Fallout 4 is still a fun game for me. It is a fantastic game for me. I've sunk hundreds of hours of my life into that game. And it's so good that I still love it so much that I even went back to an 11-year-old game in Fallout 3 and started playing that on my Xbox One because it's backwards compatible. I went back and started playing that, and then I have all these memories of it. Fallout 3 is an amazing achievement of a video game. I'm still finding new things in this game that I didn't know were there or I haven't done before, and I played this game for hundreds of hours, and it's an 11-year-old game. It's not great to look at. I mean, even in 2008, that engine was not doing anybody any favors, but it's still a very good game. Stuttering over here. And even that, I went back and to continue the trifecta of me going back to Bethesda games that I love, I went back and I picked up Skyrim. Started playing that. Started playing with mods and seeing what people could do with that. And that's what frustrates me about Bethesda, because I've been thinking about this a lot and how annoying it is to see this company, who I really liked and I perceived as one of the good guys. And I'm not saying they're EA, they're not Activision, they're not a horrible company by any stretch of the imagination. But I had this new relationship where I'm very guarded of them. And I don't know if it's going to take some time for me to repair that. Because I honestly don't know how I'm going to feel when the Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. I don't even know if I'm going to like Starfield, and that's apparently their attempt at an original IP and this, that, or the other thing. But they've put me in this odd scenario where I'm probably they're two. I talk about I don't know if I'll pick up a Bethesda game. I'll probably most likely pick up Wolfenstein and Doom. Like I said, they're carrying the company for me. They look like really fun and amazing games, especially Wolfenstein. I love the rebooted series and the fact they're putting it in the 80s and it's co-op and all this stuff. That's enough to get me excited. But I think when it comes to Bethesda Game Studios, it is going to be a long time before I can trust them with my money again. And it sucks. It really does. Because Fallout 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. And what they've been able to do with that world. It's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. So going forward, Bethesda, unless your game is Wolfenstein or Doom, I don't know if I can trust you with my dollars. And it hurts. You've hurt me. I'm sure you don't care. You've got plenty of money. So let's talk about the next thing that's going on in my life right now. Let's talk about Spider-Man, baby. Spider-Man Far From Home. Saw that on Saturday. Matinee. Got that cheap matinee prices. It's exciting to talk about. So I want to go, since this movie is still in theaters, it's still new. It's not even a week old when this goes up. I want to talk about it spoil-free, and it's going to be hard because there's a lot in this movie that changes the course of the MCU, and there's a whole lot of other cool things, and I will get to the spoiler thoughts after I give you a little bit of respite here and just talk about my spoiler-free opinions of Spider-Man. So Spider-Man Far From Home, I'm telling you, man, I said this last year before Spider-Verse came out, but after the Spider-Man PS4 came out, it is an amazing time to be a Spider-Man fan. Maybe not in the comics. I really haven't been reading the comics of Spider-Man lately, but my God. Just across the board with media, you talk about Spider-Man in the Avengers movies, Homecoming was a fun movie. Although I think Far From Home is a better movie. Homecoming's great. At the time, I thought Homecoming was the best Spider-Man movie. And I'm still conflicted with Spider-Verse, but there's a great example. Spider-Verse comes out around Christmas time. It's fantastic. Before that, if you had a PS4, you had the best Spider-Man game. In Marvel Spider-Man is what they called it. I don't know how I feel about the name, but the Insomniac Spider-Man game is hands down the best Spider-Man game out there. So it is an amazing time to be a Spider-Man fan, and it continues here. I think Far From Home is the best live-action Spider-Man movie. Now, it's hard for me to say it's better than Spider-Verse because Spider-Verse is a masterpiece, and not only animation, but in the storytelling of Spider-Man. It's unbelievable what they were able to do with that. But I will say Far From Home is great. It does an amazing job of subverting expectations. I think what they were able to do with this movie, I didn't think they could do. I wondered how they were going to. Again, this is the spoiler-free section, so I won't really go. I don't want to ruin this for you if you haven't seen it, so I won't yet. I'm giving you some respite here. I'll let you know, but it was done in a way that I thought was very intriguing. I was wondering how they were going to possibly put Mysterio in a movie and make him believable, because the character itself is kind of out there and kind of weird, and it works in the context of Spider-Man and, say, a cartoon or a comic book, but how do you bring that to the big screen? And you can never really doubt Marvel Studios and their ability to do that, because this is the 23rd movie in the MCU, and they've dealt with how we see a god like Thor and these characters that seem mythical and out there and different are able to be presented on screen in a surprisingly believable way. I mean, maybe not so much believable, but it's a testament to what they've been able to do with the 23 movies and the guidance of Kevin Feige, where, hey, maybe it's not exactly 100% believable, but it's in the context of the MCU where we've gotten this far with anything's possible. And I was very pleased with this movie. It surprised me in many ways, and I didn't have doubts. I didn't think it was going to be a bad movie, but I was wondering how Marvel was going to keep me interested, because we just got out of Endgame, which is, like I've said before, the biggest movie of the decade. And it's kind of hard to top that. And they managed, I'm not saying they topped it, but they managed to still keep me interested and entertained. And I'm very excited to see where the MCU is going to go. All right, from now on, when I am talking about Spider-Man Far From Home, you are in spoiler territory. So if you have not seen Spider-Man Far From Home, stop listening, hit pause, go out, get a ticket, go see the movie, then come back and listen to me blabber about it for a while, because I will blabber about it. So I'm going to give you a countdown here. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers are active. Holy hell, J.K. Simmons, baby, he's back. That is, to me, the biggest spoiler of this movie. I remember Adam, who's been on this show, the infamous episode, if you want to check that out, he was telling me, he texted me because he saw it like 8 a.m. on Tuesday. He's the biggest Spider-Man fan I know. He was not going to leave anything to chance. So he saw it very early Tuesday morning. And he texted, like, go see it. And I was like, I really thought it was insulting, because he should know better. Of course I'm going to see this movie. I've seen every single MCU movie. What makes you think I'm not going to see? And I've seen them all in theaters. What makes you think I wouldn't see this one? Come on now. Especially me. I love Spider-Man. But he said, I was like, just, joking around, and said, no thanks. A joking text. But he's like, you specifically will love the post-credits scene in this movie. And I kind of was just like, whatever. I didn't really believe him, but he was absolutely right. So the spoiler, again, I've already mentioned it. The spoilers are active. There's a scene that you had to have seen it at this point, unless you don't care about spoilers, where there's a video of Mysterio after the final fight, and he released a video to the public, but he didn't just release it to anybody. He released it to the conspiracy website, dailybugle.net. So right there, I was just like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? They're saying that the Daily Bugle in this world is like InfoWars. And then sure enough, we get beautiful J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson talking about it. And this setup is exactly like Alex Jones. He's got like the blazer and the unbuttoned shirt, button-up shirt. And it's a setup just like InfoWars. It's amazing. And they kind of take away Spider-Man's secret identity, which is crazy, because he straight up just says Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and it's the same, and it's very similar ending to Homecoming, where he's like, what the fuck? And then it cuts. I love that so much, because honestly, if you look at the MCU, they don't really care about secret identities honestly. And I think the only reason they even have these characters in masks anymore is for stunt doubles and CGI. So, they don't have to put their actors in risk. Because what is the point? Everybody knows who everybody is at this point. Unless, of course, they do the traditional MCU disguise of wearing a hat and some sunglasses and a hoodie, maybe. If you really want to go the whole 9 yards, you wear the hoodie as well. But that was an amazing reveal, and I was so happy with it. And the fact that they got J.K. Simmons back, and they just said, you know what the hell? Why not? Let's just bring him back, because you cannot recast J. Jonah Jameson. There is nobody on planet Earth that could be J. Jonah Jameson other than J.K. Simmons. He absolutely crushed that role. People talk about, Tom Holland being a perfect cast for Spider-Man and Peter Parker. We talk about Robert Downey Jr., all these people cast in these movies. No, the greatest casting of all time in a superhero movie is J. Jonah Jameson, J.K. Simmons, baby. Unbelievable that they got him back into this. And I think that's probably the thing that made me most excited about this whole entire movie. Another spoiler thing I want to talk about, because I don't want to have, Far From Home completely dominate this episode, but another spoiler thing I want to talk about is how they did Mysterio. Because this is actually one of the few gripes I have with this movie. I think Mysterio is great. I love what Jake Gyllenhaal did with this character. I think he was great all across the board. And it's not surprising to me because Jake Gyllenhaal is a very good, very, very good actor. But I don't understand what they were trying to get at with this retelling their history in a way. So we find out Quentin Beck, they kind of play up the Mysterio as the good guy. If you have not read a comic book or you don't know anything about Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery, you're actually like believing that he's a good guy. I mean, even Ashley was like, are you sure he's a bad guy? Because what's even better about this, too, is Mysterio is not a huge villain. When you think of Spider-Man villains, he's like a D-list villain. You don't really think... You could probably think of Vulture before you think of Mysterio. So even Ashley was like, are you sure he's a bad guy? And I'm like, he's the master of illusions. That's his whole shtick. So I don't buy anything that he's doing. Now, if you had not read a Spider-Man comic book, or known anything about Mysterio, I think you would have bought in that he's a good guy. Like, I think Jake Gyllenhaal does a great job. And the reveal that this is all just this elaborate illusion with projections and drones and all this tech, I thought that was awesome. I thought that was really cool. That was a very interesting way of interpreting the character and making it a modern character instead of some lame magic tricks with like some smoke and mirrors. It is smoke and mirrors, but it's done with technology and it's done in a way that works for this world. And even his story, like they even make fun of his story that he gives in the trailers because he said he's from another world. You are on Earth 616. I'm from this world, which is a nice little nudge. It's like, oh yeah, Earth 616 doesn't mean continuity. I like that. That's nice. And he even makes a joke about it. He's like, we made a story that was good, just ridiculous enough for people to believe that I come from another dimension and I'm a part of a multiverse. So that's, I mean, yes, they alluded to in a multiverse in the last movie with Endgame, but this movie is playing with that and playing with his character in that way where he makes up this, he said a ludicrous, silly story that I'm from another dimension, and these idiots believed it. And that's like pointing at the audience saying, you guys actually believed that. Personally, I never believed there was a multiverse because I just don't think that the MCU is going to immediately just go to where Sony just went with the Spider-Verse. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. Who knows down the line? If the rumors are true that they're making 9 Spider-Man movies, they'll probably do it at some point, and do not get me started on that. 9 movies of anything is too much, I think. Even, well, I guess especially Star Wars in this case. I'm rambling. But I love his interpretation of how he did it. Now, the thing that I do not like is his backstory in this is that he was a disgruntled Stark employee, that the tech that was used in Civil War, where he was trying to talk about how he made this whole scenario where he was talking to his parents, young Robert Downey Jr. was. Tony Stark calls it barf, and he's like, you call my life's work barf. That's where you lost me because... Oh, sorry, my mic went crazy there. That's where you lose me because... Why does Marvel insist on doing this? I don't know why the MCU is starting. They started doing it before Captain Marvel, but I think because they kind of painted themselves in a corner with Infinity War. Because I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp is set before Endgame and all this stuff, and they had to like go back in time with Captain Marvel and explain that, but then I'm like, well, why wasn't she involved in any of the other Avengers movies if Fury knew about her in the 90s? I don't like the fact that they keep going back and changing their own history and rewriting their own history. Now I understand it's their history to rewrite and their whole thing to go back, but it's just, to me at this point it's annoying. Just stick with what you have and just say that he was a disgruntled I mean, you could do. I mean, yes, you could run into the scenario where it's like, oh, this is just like what we did in Iron Man 3 with the Mandarin. It was Guy Pearce was like, hey, I got this tech, and he's like, whatever, you're a nerd, whatever, and then he becomes the bad guy. You would run into those scenarios in this movie, but I don't know. It just seems kind of lazy to me to be like, well, I worked for Stark, and Stark hates me, blah 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 blah. And I understand what they were trying to get at, and I like the thematic idea of if Tony passed on his legacy to Spider-Man, so Spider-Man has to be the new Iron Man, and he has to deal with all the shit that Tony did. And I understand the mentality behind that, but it just, I don't know, I didn't really like it. I'm not a huge fan of them just like, well, look, he was in Iron Man 1, and oh, yeah, see, look, Jake Gyllenhaal was just behind the curtain and out of frame in Captain America Civil War. See, it's all connected, blah, blah, blah. I don't need that. Just say that he looked up to Tony Stark and could never get a job with Stark Industries or whatever it needs to be, and that's it. We don't need to keep going back and saying, well, no, actually, you didn't see it, but he was a part of this, and he was right under here. And I know that's like a comic book thing, but I don't like it. That's probably my biggest gripe with the whole movie. I thought everything else was really fun. I liked all the things that they did with like the elemental stuff and just Mysterio in general. I thought everything about him was great, and I'm impressed at how good of a job they did making Mysterio in this movie. So Spider-Man Far From Home, I love it a lot. It's great, and it surprised me in how much I'm really excited to see the next Marvel movie. And I did not expect that coming out of it. So for Marvel, we head to DC. We talk about one cinematic universe that actually works and one that I don't even know exists anymore at this point. I guess Shazam and Aquaman and Wonder Woman are still in that world somehow. I don't know. Point is, let's talk about the DCEU in a context of let's talk about Zack Snyder. Now, I've talked about Zack Snyder on this podcast before, way back in March, the 10th year anniversary for Watchmen, the movie, anyway, the adaptation, hit theaters, so we talked about that. And honestly, I stand by I still stand by what I say. I still like that movie a lot. I think it was done really well. And here's the problem I run with Zack Snyder. His first 3 movies are great. Well, good, really good. I would say. Not like super great, but I like his first 3 movies. I like his Dawn of the Dead remake. I like 300. I like Watchmen. And then it starts to veer off for me when he starts doing Sucker Punch, which is his first, original idea that he's done. First time he's not really adapting anything. I liked Man of Steel too, but I could sort of see the direction we're heading in where I still defend BVS, and I think it's just me still loving Batman so much and liking the Batfleck character, because you can clearly tell that was the movie he was trying to make, was a Batman movie that just happened to have Superman in it. And we're going to get to more stuff here. So that's where it really starts to fall off, and then Justice League happens, and he has, a family tragedy and can't finish making Justice League, so Joss Whedon comes in and does some rewrites and reshoots and kind of makes a Frankenstein of a movie for Justice League. Which honestly wasn't, it wasn't good, but it was not nearly as bad as it could have been, seeing where people had the public perception of Batman v Superman. It very easily could have just continued to go down a really bad and dark rabbit hole. And I just never understood the reason that DC hitched their wagon to Zack Snyder. He's a controversial figure to some people. He's always got this weird sense of dark and gritty and edgy that he has to put to every movie that he makes. Literally every movie. And it just didn't seem to... I think I understand what they were trying to do. What Warner Brothers was going to differentiate themselves from Marvel and be where Marvel is bright colors and fun and popcorn kind of cinema, they were going to say, well, let's make more philosophical, darker takes on superheroes, which is cool in theory, but they just did not execute it very well at all. I don't want to say at all. I mean, they had their moments, but you have a guy like Zack Snyder spearheading that. And the things that happened in his life were very tragic and sad, and I'm not going to comment on them and say anything less of the guy because of it. But I am going to say he's full on absolutely 100% annoying me now. And I can't help but feel like he's some sort of, why does he keep doing this? And what I mean by that is he just released another image on his social media. I think it was Vero, that weird social media app that I think only Zack Snyder uses to post Justice League pictures. But he posted a picture of like a young Darkseid, because Darkseid was originally supposed to be the villain and they was going to make it into 2 parts. And then they said, no, Steppenwolf's the villain and we're going to make it to 1 part, because I imagine they were going to think, oh, this is going to make so much money. We're going to make another Justice League and then we could show off Darkseid, which I always hate when studios do that. Nothing is a guarantee. So I really hate it when studios, and it's always superhero movies, where they just have this idea of like, well, we really want to do this and we know you want to see that, but we're going to hold off until the sequel. You're not guaranteed a sequel, dude. And I know that you're thinking that with the Justice League, but you got so many people angry at you for Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad still made a lot of money, but those movies really pissed off your fan base, the kind of people you're aiming this movie for. So it's no surprise that people really didn't want to go out and see Justice League. It's unbelievable cockiness from Warner Brothers. So he releases this image of young Darkseid. Honestly, I didn't even looked at it because I don't care. I let it go. This movie is almost 2 years old. In November, it'll be 2 years old since Justice League came out in theaters. Zach, you got to move on, dude. Now, I understand that your vision didn't get brought to the cinema, and it sucks that it just didn't work out the way you wanted. And I'm not necessarily saying the tragedy in your family, that sucks. I'm like, no, I'm not going to be insensitive about that. That's silly. I'm just saying, because of circumstances, you didn't get the vision you wanted put to theaters. And that sucks, man. That really does. As someone who is a content creator, someone who enjoys, creative endeavors, I can see how that is really a bad situation and is unfortunate for you. I feel for him. I really do. But dude, you've got to do something else. It's been almost 2 years since this movie, and maybe there's some sort of psychological things to it. I'm not a professional. I'm not even going to try to psychoanalyze Zack Snyder, because I don't think I could last 10 minutes in that dude's brain. But why does he keep doing this? Trying to get people's public opinion switched back to him, I really think that's what it is. And I mentioned this on the Box Office Bros podcast. Check them out. They're going to be on the show soon as special guests. But I was on their show because people still are hashtag release the Snyder Cut. Why? The people that are saying, maybe not the same people, but a good majority of the people that are saying release the Snyder Cut are the same people that were online bitching and moaning about BVS and saying that Batman v Superman was not the movie you wanted. Why is Zack Snyder our guy? Why is he the one that's supposed to, all the things that I said people complain about, those same people are the people that are going out saying, I want the Zack Snyder Cut. No, you really don't. You just want to feed the monster that is the internet and be some weird fanboy that still wants to... What are you trying to achieve with this, man? Look, Justice League sucked. Having Zack Snyder's cut is not going to change that it wasn't as good as the Avengers. It was never going to be as good as the Avengers. This universe, the DCEU, which I think, again, is still going on. I have no idea what DC is doing. They've had some hits, man. Wonder Woman was great, and anything that wasn't Zack Snyder directed was actually good and enjoyable. So why would you want the Zack Snyder cut, man? I absolutely think it's petty. Or not pity. Petty is what the word I was trying to say. It's 100% petty of Zack Snyder to do this. He's so freaking jaded about this movie. And again, there could be other reasoning behind it, but just the fact that he's so jaded about this that he keeps having to just get these people behind him by releasing these concept images and things that probably wouldn't have been in the movie to get some sort of rallying cry to release his version of the movie, where you saw somebody at a con took a video of it when they were talking to him. And he's like, "Oh, it's done. Warner Brothers has got it. They just haven't released it yet." Will Warner Brothers release the Zack Snyder cut? No, because I think if you watch any of the movies post Justice League with Aquaman and Shazam, and I imagine Wonder Woman 1984, which is a stupid name. I really hope they change that. I'm fine with it being set in the 80s. I just think it's a silly name. What they've been trying to do, and like I said, this is speculation, but I guarantee Wonder Woman's going to do this. They're leaning away from that whole universe. The Flash directors, they're getting a new director for Flash, and they're trying to figure that out. So DC, why would they want to remind you of their failures? They do that enough on the DC Universe streaming app. Shout out to Swamp Thing. I still need to watch it, but what's the point? It's canceled. So why on earth would DC and Warner Brothers bother releasing Snyder Cut, other than the full-blown idea that they will make money off it because these dumb nerds on the internet, I got my piece of paper, do the classic radio host thing, wrinkle up my paper, want this stupid pipe dream that the Snyder Cut is the greatest thing that they missed out on in theaters. It's just not true, man. It's just not going to happen. Zack Snyder. Fans that tweet hashtag release the Snyder Cut. Get over it. Move on. We're in a new era of DC movies. DC movies are actually finding their footing. Did you hear that? My voice just cracked. I'm going through puberty. It's making me so angry that the 15-year-old in me is just oozing out. You didn't get the movie you wanted. That sucks, but we need to move on. Look at Spider-Man. Look at the position Spider-Man is. We're after Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Do you really think Sony was going to say, you know what, we have a version of Spider-Man Homecoming that we did with Mark Webb, and we want to release that cut? No, they wouldn't do that. Why would they do that? The only way I could see them doing that is maybe in 2027, at the 10-year anniversary of Justice League, will they release the Snyder Cut. And that will be just to get this maybe weird hashtag nostalgia out of this movie. Give me a break, people. Don't release the Snyder Cut. Bury it. Like that E.T. game from the was it Nintendo or Super Nintendo? I don't know. Bury it like the E.T. game. Just bury it in a landfill somewhere. And forget about it. Move on. Like the rest of us. There's more superhero movies out there, and I guarantee you they're going to try again at Justice League, and it's going to be better. They'll have Robert Pattinson's Batman, Pattinson. And you know what? Make Matt Reeves direct it. Or better yet, bring back Joss Whedon and make him do it again. Because I didn't hate that Justice League. I know some people did, surprisingly. What do you want, fans? What do you want? Thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Jake Williams Show, episode 42. Talked about a lot of stuff today. What are your opinions on it? Bethesda, Spider-Man, Zack Snyder, whatever you want to talk about, leave it down in the comments. Am I a madman? Are you someone that wants the Snyder Cut? Now, you could be someone that genuinely likes BVS, and I do. Believe it or not, I do. I kind of like it. If you're someone that legitimately liked that and wants to see that movie and maybe didn't like Joss Whedon's Justice League, I get it. But if you hated BVS and you hated all the other stuff that Zack Snyder did prior, why would you like it now? Doesn't make any sense. Does not make any sense. But if you want the Snyder Cut, even though I told you to move on, I can't control you what you think. So maybe even if you like the Snyder Cut, be loud. Oh, I almost forgot. Follow Loud and Opinionated on Twitter, @LoudOpinionated. Like them on Facebook, like us, I guess, because I'm a part of it. Like us on Facebook, Loud and Opinionated. Also, go and listen to our other podcasts, Loud Sports Pod, and that's the only one right now. We're working on something else that's going to be really cool, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys, and that's all I will say about that again. But yes, more importantly, above all else, be loud and be proud.